Here are the trends that we've seen during these early days of Miami Hurricanes training camp.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, writer for allhurricanes.com, and thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcast. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The sports during the summer stop sporting like we want them to, but all summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So first week, it was really a half week in the books for Miami Hurricanes training camp. Season opener at the Swamp in Gainesville. In fact, there is a notable Gators injury that might carry over through that first game. On this episode, we will talk some with our buddy Raymond Borg, who's going to hop in later, about conference realignment and Florida State and Clemson. Are they going to get out of the ACC in 3 years? I do want to share some insight that we got directly from the players about Miami's defensive backfield. But let's talk about trends we've seen from these first 3 practices that I've been out there able to watch. As noted in my immediate practice update on Saturday, I saw a lot of attention to detail from Miami's coaches when it comes to the precision of play execution and the precision of route running. They were coaching it up down to the inch. Shannon Dawson, offensive coordinator, was getting very animated during practice on Saturday while working on a very specific play. Just so I don't give, any advanced scouting to Miami's opponents, I will not talk about the details of that play, but they were working on it over and over and over again. And there did seem to be a couple of breakthrough moments, which were cool to watch in live time, where Miami was able to execute that play exactly to Dawson's specifications after falling short early on in that play. And, seeing some of this work being done in practice, where they're really going over the exact timing and the exact cuts and the exact ball placement, I think it's a reminder to me that the difference between a successful play versus an unsuccessful one or a broken play, that can come down to an inch or two, whether it be the receiver not breaking at the exact moment, whether it be the quarterback's throw just being a few inches or a few feet off and his timing being off. So it was kind of cool to see Miami working on that attention to detail. And, seeing professionals not only on that offensive staff, like Shannon Dawson and Kevin Beard, who was working very closely with his receivers. KB is always fun to watch, by the way, because he not only gets very animated during practice, but the way he demonstrates personally every single thing he wants his players to do. To me, that's great coaching out there, because his players know exactly what to expect, and they know that their coach can do it. So they should be able to do it as well. I love that. Also been, one of the things we've been following throughout training camp, and I believe this is going to continue maybe right up to that first game, is the left guard competition. It seems to be between Samson Okunlola, the Pancake Honcho, and Matt McCoy. We don't know who's going to start there yet, and I don't think that battle has been decided yet. It may not be decided for the next 27 days. I mentioned it before on the podcast that when we figure out who the starting left guard is, we might see whoever lines up on that first offensive play against the Florida Gators 27 days from now. A couple of young players who I noticed specifically during Saturday's practice, and this is not to say that these are the only freshmen who are doing well. These are just a couple of guys who popped to me in my media viewing window on Saturday. Wide receiver Carr and running back Jordan Lyle. Carr, I mentioned, had a cool catch in 7-on-7 drills where he ripped it out of the defensive back's hands on what would have been an interception. He turned it into a long catch down the sideline. And Jordan Lyle, you can see, he's getting up there. He's probably in the 190s range. He's got very big legs. He's got good speed to complement his power. I liked what I saw from Lyle, the true freshman running back in inside running drills. In the quarterback room, I've seen good stuff, not only from Cam Ward for the first 3 days of practice. I talked about Judd Anderson looking very good, Emory Williams and Reese Poffenbarger also having good reps. But Cam Ward is the one QB1 who stands out the most when it comes to his accuracy and his effortless quick release. Ward just very fluid with his timing and quick release. Now, keep in mind that the media, we don't usually get to watch 11 on 11s, like the real scrimmage type of situation. So, and they're not engaging in full contact yet at this point in practice. We're still early on. They ramp up to that. They were, for example, wearing helmet, shoulder pads, and shorts on Saturday. So they were not in full pads. So at this point, I'm not even getting to see the stuff that Ward really excels at when it comes to his mobility, his escapability, his improvisation. So we're not even seeing that stuff. We're strictly seeing, the bare bones passing drills, and he looks really good in that stuff as well. A couple of notes from players that we got to speak to this weekend after practice. Daryl Porter Jr., Miami's star cornerback, he says he wants to turn into more of a coach to help the young players. Like, he's really taken on that leadership role. Porter is a senior. Mish Powell is the other elder statesman of that defensive secondary, but you got some younger guys and, of course, new guys like Deani Hill, who just entered the room and seems to be doing pretty well so far. Porter, by the way, who's known Damari Brown going back to their American Heritage Days. So he's known Damari since, prior to them being at the U together. Damari being one of those young defensive backs we're thinking is really going to step up this year. He said, quote, on Damari, he's going to be really good, if not a first rounder. He said he has all the tools and attributes to be an All-American. He's going to be fine. He's going to have a breakout season. So I hope Porter is right about that. Daryl says he wakes up with a chip on his shoulder every morning, which is the way all of us should wake up, right? Especially if you're a high-level athlete. He says, I like taking reps against Isaiah Horton. That's someone he shouted out that he likes taking reps against in practice. He says on Horton, he's come a long way since last year. He's like a new player, he said. And yeah, and by the way, Sam Brown, the new transfer receiver, also looks really good out there. Horton has looked really good. So, Miami may have the type of problem, quote unquote problem you like to have, where you have to give 3 starting spots to 4 receivers, because of course Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George are, I think, locked into that starting lineup, Restrepo especially. So you got to figure out who gets more reps between Isaiah Horton and Sam Brown. That's a good problem to have. Daryl Porter said about a couple of the very young defensive backs. He said Robert Stafford and O.J. Frederick are doing really well, that they're both getting in the mix. He said they're getting some first team reps in practice, which is good to know. We spoke to Xavier Restrepo after practice, and something that stood out to me about what X had to say, and I'm always curious about this stuff, right? Because I go back to conversations we've had with Miami Hurricanes players through our Canes Connection interviews, through the media day interviews we had last week. They talk about being more of a player-led team, more of a self-led team, stronger locker room, more maturity. And Xavier Restrepo is on that leadership council. I know a handful of the guys who are on it. There's a few I'm not sure who are on it, but we know Restrepo is on there. We know that Jalen Rivers and Kiko Mauinoa and Cam Ward, and I've heard Mark Fletcher is on the leadership council. Restrepo told me that they currently have 8 players on their self-elected leadership council, but he says he wants it to grow. He wants it to get bigger. And he told us a cool story about one of the walk-on receivers actually having the courage to keep X in check during practice. A walk-on told X, hey, X, put your helmet on during a walkthrough. And X respected that. Like, he wasn't like, oh, who's this guy? Like, he's like, oh, no, thank you so much for keeping me in check. I thought that was a cool story. We also spoke to the aforementioned Damari Brown, who's a redshirt freshman cornerback who we're all hoping has a breakout year this year, like Daryl Porter said. Damari, I think, is going to probably potentially be a starter this year. Damari told me that he's, because his body transformation to me is noticeable. Like, he looks rocked up, like we say now. He says he's dropped around 3% of his body fat, even from spring. He said his weight is in the 197 range, so he's right around 200. That's a big corner. He says he's been getting a lot of work. He says it. I've also seen it happen in practice. He's been getting work at nickel against Xavier Restrepo, and on the reps I've seen, he's holding his own. He says it's great going up against the best of the best, being X. Always has to be on his P's and Q's, he said, going up against Restrepo. So that's something that's making him better. He mentioned a couple of the young guys. He said O.J. Frederick and Ryan Mack are also doing really, really well out there. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing in practice. And guys, I'm going to turn it over. When we come back, we're turning it over to you guys on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I want to answer you guys' questions because you guys want to know things about the early days of camp. You want to know things about that Gators game. By the way, the Florida Gators, their starting running back is injured. Will he be back in time for the Miami game? We will find out. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm only getting started with eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this Sunday episode. By the way, we're here on a weekend, guys. Hit that like button. Does Donno take days off? No. Hit that like button. I may actually take a day or two off this coming week because I'm moving. So bear with me, but I do not take Sundays off. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up to become a Locked On Canes insider. I include a link in the show description below. When you become an insider, you get text messages directly from my phone to yours, breaking news, recruiting scoops, one-on-one questions and answers. Try it free for 14 days. Click that link below. If you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes insiders chat. Get a question from insider Hurricane Keys, who says, hey, with camp just starting and your limited access, he understands that I don't get to watch the full practice. What has been the most impressive thing that you've seen so far? Okay, so if I zoom out, because I've talked about some of the specific players that have caught my eye the first few days, but if I zoom out, something that is noticeable is just the overall size of the team. And also the depth at certain positions where, there are certain battles that are hotter than others because we genuinely don't know who the starting left guard is going to be before game one. Some of the other spots are a little bit more clear, like we know who the starting quarterback is, but overall, you see more depth out there. You see players pushing players. You know who I ran into at practice this weekend? Tremaine Mack, who's a friend of the show. We've had him on before. He was here in Miami. He lives out in Seattle. He coaches. He was on campus for the first time since 2008, where he used to, I guess when Randy Shannon was here, he came out and watched some practices. But Mac was very impressed with what he saw in terms of the competition levels. He didn't go as far as to say it's, exactly like it was when he played during the national championship days and all that. But he was pretty impressed out here. And a lot of folks who come out here, former players, they're definitely happier with what they see these days than before. But when it comes to like the overall size of the team, pretty much every player that I talk to looks bigger, and they all tell me they've dropped a few percentage of body fat, and they've gotten stronger and gotten heavier just in terms of adding muscle, not adding fat. So I think it looks like the sports science and the conditioning program is working for these guys. And then, and also when we talk about size, some of the new players, I haven't talked about these guys in a couple days, but Simeon Barrow looks like a monster, and Tyler Barron looks like I'm trying to think of another word for monster because I didn't want to. He's another monster. There's a pair of monsters out there. A couple of the transfers who weren't here during spring ball and are here now on the defensive line. So you can see some transformation. I mentioned Damari Brown getting bigger. I think Markeith Williams, the safety, who's a little on the skinny side. I think he's adding a little size and muscle as well. So that's one of those things. If I like zoom out and don't talk as much about specific players, you definitely, this looks more like a football team than, what we've seen in recent years. Like this looks more like a team that would not be out of place in the SEC or the Big Ten. And actually, we spoke with Cam McCormick, Miami tight end, over the weekend. And, McCormick, remember, was on some really good Oregon teams, that Mario Cristobal coached. And he said that Miami's talent level is very comparable to really good teams that he played with in Oregon. So it's good to hear that as well. We get another question that says, hey, how does the timing look with Cam Ward and his wide receivers? It looks fine. I think for Ward had that head start. He knows these guys so well going back to spring football. And then the new guy out there is Sam Brown. And Ward has worked out with Brown a ton over the past couple of months, even before fall practice began. Now, Ward did say after the first day of practice, he told us that there's a couple of little timing things that he still needs to work out with Brown, since Brown is the new guy here. And he's, even though Brown's familiar with Shannon Dawson's offense because he played in it in Houston a couple years ago, but there's just a couple of little nuance and timing things that they're working on. But Ward didn't seem worried about figuring that out with Brown because, remember, it was Brown's first official practice on Wednesday, and we got about a little less than 4 weeks for him to get ready for the first game. So Ward did talk about that timing, but I think it's been going pretty well. And for the other receivers, for the guys who have been here, Ward already has that developed. We get a question from Nick in the 561 who says, hey, we've been hearing a lot of buzz regarding Jordan Lyle. Will he form what could be a very formidable three-headed monster with Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher? Here's the I'm very high on Lyle, but I'm not sleep. If you're talking about a three-headed monster, I'm hoping for a 5 or a 6-headed monster, because for as good as Lyle seems to be doing, I don't know if Lyle's going to pass AJ Allen and Chris Johnson on the depth chart, because, Allen, who's back, he was injured in spring, but he's full go now. And Chris Johnson, by the way, he's another one we already know he's very fast, but Johnson seems to have added some size and a little bit more power for inside runs. So I don't know where Lyle's going to fall on the depth chart. I mean, he seems special. So could there be a situation where he kind of ascends and gets more playing time as the season goes on? Perhaps. But Miami's running back room, it's loaded with guys who have more experience than him. So I don't know exactly where he's going to fit the first year, but it would not surprise me if he gets on the field. As far as the three-headed monster thing, I don't know. If there is a three-headed monster, it could be Martinez and Fletcher. Those are givens. Those guys are awesome. But it could be Martinez, Fletcher, and Johnson. Could be Martinez, Fletcher, Allen. Like, there's a number of different ways that could go. We get a question from Donnie Q, who says, how many true freshmen and redshirt freshmen do you believe will see meaningful snaps this season, and who are they? So first of all, Donnie, it's hard for me to predict that, because Miami they've got more depth in terms of upperclassmen this year, so they might need some of these freshmen a little bit less than they have in years past. At the same time, some of these freshmen look like they can play. So I'll talk about some of the guys that I think are going to play bigger roles this season as far as redshirt freshmen and true freshmen who I think can burst onto the scene. For redshirt freshmen, Malik Bryant, 100%. I think he preserved his redshirt last year. He's going to be part of the edge rusher rotation, a very deep rotation, but Malik, to me, is someone he's been popping in practice. So I think Malik Bryant is going to make himself a factor on the edge, moved from linebacker from last year. Ray Joseph, he's been practicing really well. I'm not sure if he preserved his red shirt or not heading into Sal. Just for argument's sake, I'll call him a redshirt freshman. I think he's going to emerge this year. Robbie Washington, same thing. Bobby Washington at linebacker. And definitely Samson Okunlola, like the pancake honcho. Even if he doesn't outright win the starting left guard job, he's going to be playing a lot. So either way, I think he's going to play. And also Tommy Kinsler is another one. I don't want to forget about Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, but Kinsler has been doing some good things in practice as well. So probably he won't start, I don't think, but Miami does rotate their offensive line. So expect him to get on the field. As far as true freshmen go, Elijah Lofton will not be denied. That dude is going to play. He's too good not to. True freshman tight end who can line him up at running back, line him up at receiver, probably line him up on the defense somewhere. Like, that dude's he's a football player. Zaquan Patterson is someone who's consistently looked really good to me in practice. And, with Miami having a really young defensive backfield and a young safety room, even if he doesn't start, I think Patterson's going to carve out some playing time. Also on special teams, Zaquan Patterson will get on the field a lot and hopefully make some plays there. Justin Scott, he wasn't here for spring, but he's already making an impact in practice. Expect him to be a factor this year. JoJo Trader has been practicing really well. Carr, who I mentioned, Jordan Lyle, who I mentioned. And, I'm not sleeping on Cameron Bobby Pruitt at linebacker, won't start, but I think he's going to play a lot. And Cole McConaughey, I know that obviously like Marquise Lightfoot maybe has like the higher ceiling and he could be a factor as well. But like Cole McConaughey already looks like he's 23 years old. He's 18. It's crazy. I think that dude is like physically ready to get out there and bust some skulls. So there's a number. I don't know if because I gave you a lot of names. I can't guarantee you that all of them will be impact players this year, but those are some of the guys to me that look like they're ready to play. All right. So we get a question from Jake who says, hey, since Montrell Johnson, the Florida Gators running back, he says, since he's out, can we expect the usual Miami defensive performance where the backup looks like a Heisman candidate? It seems to fit the Miami pattern of the last 20 years. Yeah, whatever combination of running backs the Gators use, they're going to go off for like 400 team yards. I hope not. But as far as Montrell Johnson goes, so he has suffered a knee injury that he's had a procedure on, and the reports coming out of the old Gators media, we're still going to crush Miami. We're just going to have to do it with Graham Mertz. He's going to tear you guys apart. So there, he's listed Montrell Johnson. He's listed week to week. So there is an implied statement that he could be ready to go. If he's week to week, he could be ready to go in 27 days. Right now, a Gator source that I talked to thinks it's going to be about 6 weeks for him, which you do the math would not, would mean he's not going to miss much time this season, but that he likely would not be available for the opener against Miami. But that's not gospel. Like sometimes these guys heal quicker. Like I think Mark Fletcher on Miami has healed a lot quicker than people thought he would coming out of his injury back in late December. So maybe that'll be the case for Montrell Johnson, but we're kind of operating, and listen, from a Miami standpoint, doesn't matter. Miami's defense needs to be ready for anybody and everybody. But for the Canes fans wondering, Florida Gators starting running back is in jeopardy of possibly missing that first game. We're not nearly done yet, my friends. By the way, I have finalized my preseason win-loss prediction for the Hurricanes. I hate putting this out there in the universe. I hate publishing these, but I had to do what I had to do. I'll tell you my win-loss prediction. We'll get our friend Raymond Borg's win-loss prediction, and we'll talk about conference realignment rumors when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. We're certainly not done with FanDuel. I will never be done with FanDuel because we're winning so much money. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Folks, we've gotten through the summer with our Olympic wagers, UFC fights, international soccer, and now we're knocking on the door of college football season and NFL football. You can lock in Miami Hurricanes -2.5 against the Florida Gators at FanDuel, which is actually, better for the Canes fan than some of them have at Miami -3, Miami -2.5. If you're going that way, that's better for us. The better. You can lock in Miami at +450 odds to win the ACC. Check it all out on America's favorite sports book. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. I co-host that show with Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. We take you guys around the conference from actual football previews to realignment rumors, lawsuits, all that good stuff. I think it's entertaining. Check out Locked On ACC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Bring on our pal, Raymond Borg. It's been a minute. Now, Ray, I want to announce to everyone watching and listening to this that I have been under duress. I had to put my win-loss prediction on record for this coming season because I'm a big jinx, so I hate putting out preseason predictions. But the website that I proudly write for, allhurricanes.com, they needed my win-loss prediction, and so I went with a 10-2 season for Miami in third season of Mario Cristobal. Now, I didn't have to specify which games they lose. The toughest games on the schedule, obviously, Louisville on the road, Florida State at home, I believe, are the two toughest. There are lots of landmine games on there. I'm not saying the opener against Florida will be a country picnic. That's a tough place to play. But I think Miami's going to come out of their schedule 10-2 this upcoming season. What say you?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I'm more of 11-1. I think the trip-up games are USF for sure. But I think with the leadership specifically this year is going to be better. But the other one of the two games they could lose are either going to be Florida State because they're loaded. I mean, we don't like Florida State, but you must respect them. And potentially Louisville because I believe that's at Louisville. Looking at the schedule here, really at Louisville, and that's tricky. I've been to that stadium when Shannon was there when they got pounded, and I got out of there barely with my life with that fan base. But those are probably the two trip-up games, I think. But it should be 11-1. They put in a lot of great talent, seniors and juniors. I see a lot of positivity for this. And last season was last season. The kneel down. In fact, actually, I wish that during the spring game, Mario would have taken a knee at the end of the spring practice game because that would have been lovely.
But by the way, I was playing I started my Hurricanes Dynasty on the college football video game, and I took a knee to beat the Florida Gators by 8 points in the opener. So a sign of things to come, maybe.
We hope. Hopefully, we'll be more than 8 points.
Now, something I'm glad, Ray. If Miami goes 11-1, like you predict, that they're only going to trip up in one of those games, that should definitely be enough to get into the ACC championship game. If they go 10-2, it might not, because I've seen some predictions out there, because not all these teams play each other this year. I've seen some folks predict that Florida State, Clemson, and Miami might all win 10 games this year, or if not Clemson, maybe NC State. They've got an easy schedule and a good team that if you've got three conference teams that win 10 games and they don't all play each other, so the tiebreakers come down to other conference games are probably complicated formulas. How do you think Miami fans would feel, Raymond, if Miami went 10-2, but they miss out on the ACC championship game by some kind of a tiebreaker?
I think the bottom line, as long as we get into the playoff, who cares? It's nice to get in there, but it's a borderline. That's all let's get into the playoff. I mean, that's the mentality now has changed, unfortunately. Traditionally, you win the conference, you get into the playoff. You win the conference, you get to a better ball game. But that's out the window now. You just want to make the playoff. If they make the playoff and it looks good enough, they'll be fine. At least we have a pretty decent out-of-conference schedule. Playing the SEC, that's always going to be points. And also at USF, they potentially could win the American. They're loaded as well, too. So if they basically beat USF and they win the American, that's definitely points in Miami's favor for the committee.
You are an enthusiast when it comes to conference realignment and everything that's been going on. Now, first of all, there's been a lot of buzz now about like 2027. That might be the date when legally Florida State and Clemson can get out. The courts will have to determine, is there still a valid grant of rights beyond 2027, which is like the technical end to the TV deal that ESPN can extend. Even if they extend it, do you technically need a new grant of rights? What do you think? Like 2027, Raymond, do you think that's the year, or maybe even before that Florida State and Clemson are able to hit the eject button?
I think it's even going to get potentially earlier, but it all depends on the courts. I figured most of this will be done. I said the end of summer. I got another month that before the court's decisions are going to be made. So there still could be some things coming down the pikes. But like on your show yesterday, you said just the Florida State, Clemson need one more, one legal victory, and they're gone. Then the rest will follow. I think it's going to be earlier than that. I think right now there's the movement toward college football, and the ACC is just trying to fight it. It's going to become the Premier League. It's been reported by multiple people. Stuart Mandel of The Athletic said years ago, I made a comment about that. He wrote about it. I thought he was just being crazy, but he had inside source. And recently, working on a Sunday afternoon, doing some stuff in the garage, I listened to other podcasts, listened to the Bruce Eisen show. Bruce Feldman was on there, and that's exactly what he said. To me, it's a done deal. There's also a done deal. They're just waiting for everything to blow up in the ACC, so everyone's things start shifting. And that's when all the pieces will eventually come together for a 60-plus team conference and probably a regionalized pods. So it'd be the old school Big Ten, Pac-10, SEC, etc. In fact, the rumor is Bruce Feldman said the commissioner of that was going to be, and I don't remember all the names, is the SEC commissioner. He will be in charge of the new conference.
Yeah, Greg Sankey. And what you're referring to, you're talking about what people have called the Super League, like the Super League, which would basically replace the current conference structure, and it would all just become, and would they, under this scenario, Raymond, would they cut the NCAA out, or the NCAA, did they ensure their survival with this House settlement?
I think they'll be out of football. I think they've already cut themselves out by all these issues going to transfer. They've cut themselves out. It's their own fault. Yeah. 25 years ago, they should have taken care of this when all the money was rolling in for TV contracts, not giving players more of a something, anything. So what they did was basically let an atmosphere of cheating, and I don't call it cheating. Players are getting played. So what? We've seen coaches they're the highest paid employee of the state, such as Bobby Bowden was for Florida. Everyone forgets about that, he was making $1, $2, $3 million a year, which is still a lot of money, but really a lot of money back then. It's like you can't give a little bit to the players. You can't give them something else. And they did it to themselves. They just didn't get with the times. They were using an old model from the 40s and 50s, and it just wasn't working anymore.
One thing that people have tried to use against Miami when it comes to how attractive they are in conference realignment, or the stadium attendance, which people like to make fun of us for that. There's memes out there about the empty seats at Hard Rock Stadium. How much of a factor do you think that is, and also how much of a factor would be having a great season coming up? Like how much could Miami improve their stock with a 10-11 win type year, maybe a college football playoff appearance?
I think tremendously, but the biggest thing is they talk about the attendance, but Miami is a world city, so they want major events. They're not going to want to see them play Sister Mary's of the Pro, and the poor, and you're going to get 80,000 in old Joe Robbie. That's not going to happen. But it's not about who's in the stands. It's about TV ratings. That's all that matters. That's where the money's really coming from. That's a nice little bonus, and it looks kind of pretty for TV, but it's all about the ratings. And Miami is still a national brand. But not also are they just a national brand for football, but also other sports. And specifically, everyone's missing the key point is women's sports. And they're very good at women's sports. And that also is a very important thing in this climate with Title IX.
Okay. I like that. So you think, because one of the things I put up there on the screen is what conference will Miami be 10 years from now? So you think, and I like this prediction, that in 10 years, we could be in a Super League 60 team conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to also break down. Football is going to be its own entity. It's going to have the Super League, Premier League. The rest of the sports, I think, will go back to the old conference. In fact, one thing I think that could realistically happen is if this does happen with football, I could see the old Big East get back together. I could see Cuse and Boston College return to the Big East for all the other sports outside of hockey and football. I could see that reunite because they're all Catholic schools. The Big East is still mostly a Catholic school, and they're still a pull from the old fan base. They miss the Big East, and in some ways I do, but it's also an old era. But if football changes, then there's no reason for them to really stick around the ACC either.
Well, a Big East reunion might be fun. Make sure you guys are checking out Raymond Borg. We're always happy to have you on the show, my friend. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel. Hit that thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. So Raymond, am I going to see it that Florida game in 27 days? You're going to be watching it on TV.
I'm going to be watching it on TV. I've got too many business trips, but I'll be making it. But I'm considering the Georgia Tech game, so I would like to invite all your Locked On Canes, I guess, supporters, including Bruce, Hoodie Girl, Chalupa Batman, I believe it is.
Yes.
To come up to Georgia. I've not decided to go into the game. I always wait for the time, but if they all come up, I will find a way to make the time, and maybe we can find a place to do all of us sit down at a table and do a show together in Georgia.
I want to try to come up for that one as well. I'm definitely going to Florida and USF road trips because they're so close. But I mean, Atlanta's like less than an hour and a half by plane, so I'd like to get up there as well. So hopefully I see you there and see everybody out there. So everybody, and we got a lot of Canes fans, by the way, in Georgia. So not all of us are going to have to hop on a plane. So let's get out there.
I get pulled over by shirts and what's on my car. There is a bunch of Miami fans. There's many of them in my neighborhood. In fact, I believe you made a comment about somebody who listens to your show, Cherokee, Georgia fan, whatever. That's my county, and they could meet up at a restaurant about 2 miles from my house. So there's a lot of fans here, and I got pulled in by we'll say, I think it was a wholesales club, and his next cop, I can't remember, was Dade or Broward, but he knew a lot of the Canes. He grabbed me from the side, started talking with me. So there's a huge Cane base, alumni base.
Let's all meet up there in Georgia. We'll talk to everybody next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.